Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is the daily medicine transmission for June 9th, 2021. We are in our pre-eclipse time. We're still in this portal, right, that started with the full moon lunar eclipse, but we're really gearing up now for this total, well, no, not a total solar eclipse, an annular solar eclipse, the ring of fire. Oh boy. Falling into that ring of fire is, man, it's no joke right now. So welcome to my subscribers. Welcome back to my subscribers, my supporters. Thank you so much for being here. You truly are the lifeblood of this channel. I appreciate your support so much to keep things moving. And if you're new here, welcome. It's great to have you. And as always, whenever you interact with content by independent content creators, by liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting, it actually does support the content and the work of these creators like myself, who are independent of any sponsorship, buying any views, buying any subscribers, all of that stuff. So any impact you can make is really reflected mostly in the way that you interact with this content. And that's really what it's all about, actually, is the interaction, the communion, the sharing and cooperation. That's where our real power lies. So let's just get into today, shall we? It's a late start, I know, and there's a lot of things swirling around, and it just gets heavier and heavier and crazier as we move through these times. And it's really, I cannot stress this enough, how important it is right now with this eclipse just looming, with Mercury, Cazimi, right, in a conjunction with the sun, pretty much right at the same time, in a square to Neptune and Pisces. It is essential. It is absolutely essential that we are very grounded, that we know where our root system is, that we are capable of drawing on our personal power from that stabilized root system and the core of who we are, because it's about to get cray if it hasn't already. And I don't want to minimize the incredible emotional impact of some of these events that are transpiring now, that will transpire. But the thing that's really essential to remember, and it came through so strongly today, as I was receiving, right, the transmission, as I was receiving my own guidance in my own morning routine and ritual. It's important to stay as grounded as you can. There's a lot of energy happening up here. There's Gemini. The moon is in Gemini now, right? She is getting ready to come into that communion with the sun, with a conjunction. That is what a new moon represents. And so we're at the very last bit of this moon phase that started with a new moon in Taurus. We talked about it yesterday because the moon met with Black Moon Lilith at this position, and then also was in a trine to Pluto. That means that Black Moon Lilith today also is going to trine Pluto. And as we talked about yesterday, to allow this process to unfold, the algol position where the moon and now Black Moon Lilith is going to be in a trine to a retrograde Pluto, right? To allow the release of that aspect, the Gorgon that represents the unresolved trauma and the toxicity that surfaces and presents itself as our identity when we are not aware and we are not actively working on healing and rectifying that which is has taken root within us, right? We all suffer some trauma in our lives, some seemingly more difficult than others. And that is the cross for all of us to bear, right? Whatever that is, it's really what we do with that experience and how we come out of it that really makes the difference. And if this is unresolved, if we are not working with this, oh man, the reading today, we'll get to it. And I want to express how much I wanted to put this card back and pull another one, but it's not how it works. And ultimately, for as much as we're going to see that there is a potential real falling out or a material failure, this is where we learn the most. And oftentimes it is this fall into the abyss grace or this fall from grace that allows us to totally surrender to a miracle, right? To the intervention of divine source in some way in our lives, right? The divine intervention, the 7 to the 8. And so as much as we want it all to be exactly how we want it to be, and we want to bask in our, in our glory, in our victory, whatever that means to us. And it's not to say that those things won't be there, but just be prepared that there has to be a balancing point in order for homeostasis to happen, right? So if there has been one side of things that has been propped up and has gotten more power and is been in control for a long time, the nature tends towards homeostasis and balance. And of course it needs chaos and entropy to even know this state and to move towards it. And I assure you, it's still not going to feel like anything more than a material failure. And that's the sting of Saturn, really. So we'll get into the chart. We'll look at the moon's transits today, because those are the main aspects to be looking at, the moon's transits today. There aren't any major transits right this moment, but honestly, the moon, in the balsamic moon in Gemini, is plenty. It's absolutely plenty, especially because she's going to meet her own North Node at Aldebaran, right? Associated with Archangel Michael. So there is hope. There's support. There is this warrior nature, success through integrity that's really here. And with Venus also in a conjunction with fixed star Ohana in Cancer, the foot of Pollux, which was the southern of the two Gemini twins. There is so much potential here for peaceful negotiations, but it will require that we get grounded. So like I said, so much of the energy is swirling around in these upper chakras, and it's not that is inappropriate or we should do something about that necessarily. The real trick is to get grounded, bringing the energy down, making sure that we have a open channel that is moving up and moving down freely. But the root system, wow. And I knew that the Hermit was going to come out today. I just knew it. I could feel it. The Virgo part, right? The feminine aspect of the mercurial energy, because Mercury has the Gemini as its rulership, also Virgo as its rulership. It is non-binary, or all binary, right? It's one and the same, but Mercury holds the masculine and feminine aspect, and it's really important that we balance, that we take the time to balance all of this really masculine Gemini air energy, this mutable air energy today, with the other aspect of Mercury, which is the Virgo, and to get grounded. And Saturn is here now, and whether we like it or not, but we can see the power of Saturn as the time clock, right? As something that we can use to our, advantage, or certainly gain some semblance of groundedness and patience, right? That's the thing about Saturn. The Lord of Time does show that we can use time, and we can not necessarily manipulate it, although I did post something on Telegram, this really interesting anthropological video about time and time travel and the manipulation of the fourth dimension in order the manipulation of the third dimension in order to move through the fourth dimension, which is time. But there's patience here that can be enacted, and a real knowing of when to act and when not to act on certain things. And the reason this is so important is because the power of this eclipse in Gemini and Mercury in Cazimi, in that conjunction with the sun in Gemini, especially that it's retrograde, in a square to Neptune in Pisces, it's really, we can manifest anything. We can manifest anything. And when we're unconscious, when we are being manipulated, when we are not grounded in a way, or at least connected to the core of who we are, and we are led around by outside forces, we will still manifest. Like, the power of this eclipse is going to reverberate for the next 6 months. And I'm going to give a report today about that, about what to expect over the course of this eclipse season with this new moon eclipse. And of course, we're in a new moon cycle as well. So we still have this lunar cycle to actually interact with and interface with and grow and learn from. But the eclipse energy itself is also going to spread out. It's going to be a ripple effect over time. And if we try to push things because of where the energy is like swirling and swirling and swirling up here, certain things are going to transpire over the next couple of weeks that if we jump on them and we don't realize the value of patience and waiting and knowing the right time to act or respond, we could find ourselves feeling a total loss in some ways. So let's look at the chart and see what we're dealing with today, of course, and giving us some insight on how to manage this pre-eclipse energy and to really see how the moon, for as much as, in her balsamic phase in Gemini, again, it's just like everything swirling around, all of the potential and new ideas, new communication, new concepts constantly being brought into our subconscious awareness at the very least, or in our direct awareness as well. So let's see here, making sure that we are, let me make sure, oh, here we go, that's why. All right. Here we go. Here is our chart for today. It is June 9th, 2021. And we see here that the moon in the current moment here in a conjunction, look at that, with Aldebaran, 9 to 10 degrees Gemini, coming into a conjunction with the North Node, also meeting and sitting on essentially and getting closer to fixed star Aldebaran, right? So again, one of the royal fixed stars in a relationship with Archangel Michael, the success through integrity that it represents. So, and of course, this degree of Gemini is the new opportunities, right? The new lands, the pioneering aspect that goes along with discovery and exploration and curiosity, all of those Gemini qualities, and the mutable air that allows us to engage with the full spectrum of possibility in Gemini. So the moon meets the North Node, and we're going to, it's such a beautiful moment here to really embody within us our emotional landscape and our intuition where we're going, where we're being drawn to in order to evolve personally and collectively. We're going to really feel it. And this is important to realize in terms of, the head of that dragon, right? The North Node, for all of the power that it gives us to get to this next phase, whatever it is for us. And that's really what the North Node is driving us. Remember, it's the head of the dragon, which can be kind of obsessive, right? And we can't let go totally. You can't let go of any of these opposition points. They are, they're intrinsically linked to each other, just like Gemini is, represents that in its symbolism. But we can't let go of the South Node that is also, the South Node was these lunar eclipse, these large collective paradigms that we're being asked to release over the next 6 months within us, right? And something that's in our ability to intuit and to feel. And this degree of Sagittarius of the South Node, Antares, right? The heart of the Scorpion, getting into the depth and the truth of the real power, and it stings, doesn't it? It really stings, and we don't want to stay there. Remember, that is what we're releasing in order to move forward, but we can't forget that it also provides the momentum to get us there, right? And so returning to the body, returning to the feeling of these relationships, our cooperation, our communion together, right? It's about what we can create together and the power of our cooperation, the power of the symbolism that we enact our rituals toward, right? There's real power here. This is the power of our relationships and the resource that is, that's the Scorpio realm, the heart of the Scorpion. So Sagittarius is the act of the alchemy, right? The fire. And the heart of the Scorpion is, like I said, it's a sting. It's definitely a sting. And so it's not to say that we will definitely be feeling this. It's people have been feeling it. We continue to feel it. I mean, yeah. there's a lot of, I don't want to, I could relate story after story after story, my own personal life, the people I know personally, about how this lunar eclipse has really impacted. And now we are solar eclipse, and we are absolutely going to jump into that ring of fire. Talk about a soundtrack, right? Talk about a soundtrack for this eclipse, the ring of fire. We have to consciously jump into it, not fall into that ring of fire. And it burns. It does burn, just like the sting of the scorpion, the ring of fire. But if we want to get somewhere new, if we want to move towards these new opportunities, these new ideas, if we want to be released in a way in order to move freely, right, Mercury, then we have to release our connection to that sting, right? Because otherwise it's going to hold us back. And I'm not saying that there's nothing to process here. Oh my gosh, there's so much to process, but we also have to see it for what it is providing us, the momentum to move into new territory, to explore, to discover something new, to consider new ideas, to be curious rather than to be, so wrapped up in this old paradigm of the higher mind and the collective belief system, because it's time to let those things go. And everybody's going to be facing this in different ways, and it's consistently been very painful, right? Again, the sting of the scorpion is so painful. But this is also where we learn and we grow the most. And some people made the ultimate sacrifice in some ways, or made the choice to go through this process not physically incarnated. And we're going to keep seeing this. This is not going to go away. And of course, death is part of life. I mean, there's no getting around that. But as we'll see, that it just feels to me, and it's being reinforced in a lot of different ways, that that choice is going to be something that is going to come up for a lot of people continually, and it has already. So, some people don't feel like that it's a choice, but we're working from an evolutionary astrological perspective, and the idea that, in fact, we did choose to come in at the time and the location of our birth in order to utilize this blueprint of our natal chart in order to our soul to grow and evolve. So, as we move through today, so we have this moment here with the moons just right here coming to meet the North Node. So there is this kind of a lift in some ways that we're all going to be feeling, but it also does stimulate all of that curiosity and all of the movement within us in terms of ideas. And again, this is why getting grounded is important. So when the moon moves on here, it comes into a sextile, right, with Chiron in Aries, right? That frustration with things not already frustration. Take Chiron out of the picture, the frustration with things not happening as quickly as we'd want to, much like an adolescent gets frustrated, much like many of us have been frustrated in some ways. This sextile to Aries, so Gemini in Aries, right? We've talked about this before, this virtuoso, each of us in Gemini exercising and performing our skill set, right? Because Gemini in the third house really is about that technical skill that we're each learning, right? We learn a skill, we learn how to interface with the reality through some means of a technique, right? Whether it be learning, music is, and the practice of music, for instance, is something I can relate to, being a former music student. It's rote repetition, it's practice and practice and practice in order to eventually be able to express something. But that left part of the brain that's practicing, and it's very linear in that way, we are practicing it and performing it and being, allowing ourselves to be inspiration for other people, not because we're trying to get any feedback from them or accolades. That's much more of a Cancer thing, but in the sense that we are just performing and showing our technical skill and how we have come to master it. So when we're feeling this way, right, with the Gemini, and we emotionally are engaged with this energy of virtuosity and performing this skill, whatever it is, we all have our own skill, right? this sextile, again, this investment opportunity, the Star of David, the 6 in numerology, right? The harmonious connection that requires us to participate in order to activate something. We're already here able to invest this very masculine mutable energy into cardinal fire, giving it the action here that Aries represents is really activating the expression of this skill set, whatever it is. And for each of us, it's very personal, right? With the moon. But the Chiron aspect, it's already, the frustration is already there to activate us wanting to practice more, to get better at something, to not just roll over and be like, ugh, this is not happening quick enough. Okay, there's something I need to work on more. But Chiron in the mix is making this very difficult because our frustration is triggering us in these very deep wounds of self and the shame and the guilt for just having an ego consciousness. This is why being present right now in this moment is really going to be helpful. And just acknowledging this and seeing it as an opportunity to really get better at and be some sort of example or inspiration for other people to harness this energy and actually use it for something. Use it for something expressive. Use it for something that has to do with our curiosity and our practice, right? Because that's really that third house Gemini. It's about practicing. Sometimes it's rote repetition, right? Especially with music. It is hours and hours of practicing scales, playing one note to perfect your tone, right? If you play like a wind instrument. Anything like that. So there's this, as we move through the Gemini aspect, we see here ways that we can, in fact, perfect our skill, that we can use this frustration as a way to actually, embolden and activate this real personal and very intimate desire and drive, because that moon does really represent that, because it structures our outward consciousness in some ways, right? The way we emote and the way that we feel. We have a real outlet today and a real opportunity here to invest this energy instead of getting stuck in Chiron in this loop of victim savior. I got to do something. Well, we can do something, but it has much more to do about investing that energy into our own development of our own skills and techniques, whatever they are, in order to inspire other people. So we move on from here right away, coming into a trine with retrograde Saturn. Remember this degree, 13 to 14 degrees of Gemini. Telepathy. This is about rising above all of the aspects of 3D life that is imposed upon us naturally, right? It's natural. We're here in physical form, so we have to accept this. You're going to see this come up in the reading too today. It's telepathy. It's direct communication outside of the physical barriers, outside of the social distinctions, the cultural overlay. It's direct communication. And this is one of the primary skills of the magician, right? Is the telepathy aspect. It is rising above all of these constraints in order to have direct interface with each other, with the collective, with our own higher self. And this is, again, why it's important that we are grounded, because if we, there's the potential here with this solar eclipse is that we have so many options to choose from, and we can activate and manifest anything, right? It's really where our attention is going to go and where we're putting our energy. And again, if we go back to Chiron here, if we're going to invest an unconscious Chiron wound into this, I assure you we are going to manifest it, if not already. And it's not to say that people somehow deserve these really challenging and heartbreaking situations that are being presented to them. Quite the opposite. it's not about that. It's about leading us to really, to very strongly master ourselves, right? And so again, these trines, this air trine, right? That doesn't really require anything for us. It's just going to be foundationally supportive of each other. And so you don't really grow or learn too much from trines. They're very, very stable connections. But in this moment, it will be a stable connection because Saturn retrograde is that tunnel that is narrowing, where there is less room for us to make this shift right now, and we need to see that. This is part of our evolution, especially with Saturn in Aquarius, really making it very real, very palpable, very based in the material matrix that is, being dismantled is by Pluto, and has been for years and years, really multiple decades at this point. We're moving into, it's been 24 years, right? 2008 was when Pluto came into Capricorn. So this has been a process unfolding for a while, but it's about rising above all of these distractions, and they are really potent and painful distractions in a lot of ways, right? Again, Chiron involved. We want things to happen in a certain way, and we want them to happen now. We want this potency and desire within us to actualize on our own terms, and you can't force growth, right? It has to happen on its own cycle. So this trine today with this retrograde Saturn with the moon, it's not going to really provide much opportunity for learning, but what it will do is be like a respite moment of just like, okay, if I can, if you can really settle in internally and personally and emotionally to this idea of telepathy, what it really means to rise above all of these blockages, it's really going to support us as we are moving through the eye of the needle in some ways, this narrow pathway that Saturn is making in real time, right? Is literally constricting and slowing time down in some ways. But at the same time, it's like making that tunnel smaller and smaller, and it will feel like the walls closing in around us. I think many people have been feeling that, and there is going to be a reckoning around this, I assure you. And we're going to be witness to it to a certain extent. And this is why this being able to rise above this internally and emotionally, and being able to have direct connection with our own source, with those in our community that we're connected to, not being distracted or the overlay of all these other possibilities, is going to be really important. So from here, the moon is going to come into not only a trine with asteroid Vesta, which is over in Virgo, is also going to be in opposition to asteroid Juno in Sagittarius. Now, this is interesting because we are going to be facing a serious karmic confrontation in this position here, just in general, because we are going to start really feeling this very dramatic urge to express ourselves, to exteriorize this process, to proselytize, right? This is what 16 degrees Gemini is. Remember, I want to point out, last year, the full moon lunar eclipse that happened on June 5th was at this degree of Sagittarius, where Juno is right now, okay? It was eclipsed, right? The seagulls following the big ship in the ocean, and the idea that the transference at its very basic level, right, of abstraction, which is what Sagittarius represents, the transference of abstraction and archetypal representation. When it first happens, we're going to follow the easiest meal, and psychically. And boy, oh boy, wasn't that obvious. I thought it was obvious at the time. And I had to, for me personally, that was the day that I touched down in Pennsylvania from Oregon, not fully realizing that I was going to be leaving for good. I had an idea, but that was also right on my 11th house cusp, like directly. So I can speak to this in terms of my own personal experience, because last year, what was going on during this time, the riots, right after George Floyd, they they burned a church in Washington, D.C., that whole rigmarole around all of that. Everything was just like on fire, and people were really, getting very worked up. But what was interesting is, again, this degree of Sagittarius, right? The easy meal. We're going to follow the path of least psychic resistance when it's being offered to us. Ooh, look at these breadcrumbs. Ooh, look at all of this. We'll just feed you propaganda. We'll just feed you the sustenance so that you don't actually have to like do the work of getting it yourself. Wow, man. A year later, that seems pretty obvious to me. So now we're dealing with this again, except the moon is in this position, right? In an opposition to Juno, in a square to Vesta, karmic confrontation, down to the very animal nature of who we are. We have to address this in order to actually come back out of the darkness that Virgo represents. It's the characterization versus the second half of Virgo, which is education, right? We really learn where we're coming from and who we are by going into the depths of who we are, which is the Virgo archetype, which is the Hermit archetype. So we may start, feeling a really strong drive to, like I said, exteriorize what we've discovered, to express ourselves, to proselytize. We want to get people on board, right? I haven't gotten there yet. Well, the square here and the opposition is really going to challenge this. And in some ways, this square to Vesta is really going to help us kind of pull back a little bit in terms of just like, I'm here to, emote the truth and tell you what it is, proselytizing on the pulpit in some ways. And that's not a negative thing. It's this square to Vesta, which I think is very interesting, that has really been supporting each of us on our path of discipleship and purification, right? The path of the hermit. And the square is going to force us to change. And there is a part of ourselves that, as much as we feel this drive to exteriorize and to proselytize and to express this newfound experience, even perhaps the newfound experience of the telepathy that we experience with that trine to Saturn. The challenge here is going to be the fact that we still have to face ourselves. We still have to face ourselves. And then the opposition to Juno retrograde in Sagittarius, where we are really going back over our contracts, right? Is it still valid? Did the other party maintain their end? Did they uphold their end of the bargain, right? And Juno is in the territory of her counterpart, which is Zeus or Jupiter, right? And so for better or for worse, she has stuck by him, but she has also acted out in some ways when he has stepped out on her. And so they are inextricably tied together, but it also leads to some really bad behavior on both of their parts when things don't go the way they want them to go. And so Juno has us reevaluating these contracts, what it means to be committed, who and what values are we committed to, right? What do we want to commit or sign contracts with? And this retrograde Juno has been really going through this process for all of us. And now the opposition to the moon is we have to find that fulcrum, right? At the same time that we have to just lean into the square with Vesta in this karmic confrontation. We're starting to feel and really want to express that we've learned something, that we have knowledge of something new based on our exploration and our curiosity. But the problem is that we're still feeling and going through a review process with Juno retrograde about what values we really want to stay committed to. What are our contractual obligations when when it comes to taking the sustenance that's been given to us without having to actually work for it. We're gonna have to live with this. And so what is that? That's a T-square, isn't it? We have an opposition and Vesta. Vesta is that point that releases the tension, which is that karmic confrontation to the very animal nature of who we are. We have to face ourselves. And if we do that, that will, in fact, burn the flame that sustains us as we go through this process, okay? And then let's look at, I just want to point this out while we're going through it. And then I did talk about how Black Moon Lilith. We talked about Black Moon Lilith a lot yesterday. So just to kind of continue that conversation, because she is also going to now be in a trine to Pluto, retrograde in Capricorn. So these earth elements, right? Black Moon Lilith in Taurus and fixed star Algol, right? So what started yesterday is now getting much deeper, something even more connected to our self-preservation and almost defiance in some ways. There was a conversation I had on social media this morning about this, and somebody had brought up like how defiant they were feeling and how they wanted to push back about all of these control mechanisms because of Lilith and how much it's being brought to our awareness right now. And so this is going to get even more entrenched and even more of an intense release in terms of Pluto as well. So Venus in Cancer is in a conjunction with fixed star Alhena. This is on the foot of Pollux. This is the mortal twin, right, or the southern twin of the Gemini twins. And Alhena, actually, lucky for us, actually is characterized with a Venus nature, and that's where she is right now. And so there's a certain amount of getting to the root of our problems that this star represents and negotiating peaceful solutions. And Venus in Cancer is so beautiful. She's so, she's so gracious and generous with those that she loves and feels a strong familial bond to, those really strong connections in our familial matrix, in our tribal regional identity, in our home and family, even the nation we belong to. Patriotism is a very Cancerian fourth house thing. And it's so interesting that, Capricorn, being more of the collectivist, globalist mindset, has been trying to squash nationalism for, decades and decades, and that dynamic is so fascinating, especially considering that, Pluto is destroying that matrix in Capricorn. So take that for what you will. But the artistic skill is very high with Alhena, especially with the written and spoken word, because there's a mercurial element as well. We're getting to the roots of problems. We're negotiating peaceful solutions here with Venus. Venus, who is the goddess of love. Venus, who values relationships, values the resources that provide harmony and balance, generous and gracious. She is in this position today to really be enhanced. And so there is a little bit, too, of an innocent and spontaneous mind trying to satisfy our curiosity about the mysteries and what seems fleeting. And when she comes into Cancer, to the next degree of Cancer tomorrow, in the same time as the eclipse, it's going to be less innocent and spontaneous and more like being a raw diamond cut, right? Which is going to be even more painful and arduous of a situation. So right in this moment today, as she is in Cancer in this conjunction with Alhena, we can really attract this to us, right? Venus is an attractor. She's magnetic, right? She is the earth element, and she is the just and Lady Justice, the holder of the scales. So there is a purity and understanding here as well, with Venus in this position here today. So that's really the astrology for today to work with. So let's, wow, hold on one second. The sun is very bright. All right, so we're gonna move into the reading today so we can start unpacking this from an intuitive perspective. And like I said, you'll see it. There's that 7 of discs. I mean, Crowley, the Book of Thoth and the Thoth deck, regardless of what you think about Crowley, I have some pretty strong opinions about him as a esoteric practitioner, and how, whatever. But what I will say is that he had a flair for the dramatic, that is for sure. And so a lot of these, the imagery and the archetype that go along with it are usually also very dramatic. So just keep that in mind as we are looking at it, because in the Rider-Waite deck, for instance, the 7 of Pentacles is not nearly as dramatic looking as how Crowley had it put out. But sometimes you need that dramatic flair and that really stark symbolism to really trigger something. And the 7 in all of the suits is that fall from grace, right? It's the wild card that fucks everything up and allows us the opportunity to surrender to divine intervention, right? The 8. So let's go into this one piece at a time, shall we? Because there is a lot here to be said, despite the outcome here being a serious material failure. And some people are going to experience this. And I think that it's really here, this energetic vertical polarity, the axis of our power, that's really going to make a difference in how we engage with this energy, right? Because there's always potential and possibility for growth, no matter how dire it seems. So first, Princess of Wands reversed, okay? All right. The Venus of the fire, right? The Venus of the fire. This is the princess of the shining flame. So she's very playful, very insatiable, right? The flaming. You can see here that she's got no cares. She's got this cat, this large predatory cat, just literally wrapped around her. She's nude. She's riding this flame. She's got a sunflower or a sun as a wand. She's got a flaming pedestal next to her. You know, it's like I said, it's very playful. It's very seductive, but it's also very innocent and kind of immature and irresponsible. Not to say that Venus is those things, but in these court cards. So the court cards represent us. We have the princess here. So we have this Venusian energy, and then the fire. So when she's reversed, okay, remember, this is a causal factor here coming into the moment. When she's reversed, it is self-indulgent, again, theatrical and dramatic, right? We're talking about fire, domineering, unable to feel real compassion, right? When it's reversed. This is important to remember when it's reversed. This is all about her feeding her own fire, and pulling towards her what feeds her own fire. And when we do that, then we are unable to feel compassion and true understanding, because it's so focused on ourselves. And so there's greed, there's arrogance, there's superficiality, there's domination, there's gossip. Ooh, Princess of Wands reverse is definitely intolerable gossip. Because it's really just about her, and again, pulling towards her what just fulfills her fire. What's the fuel for her fire? So this is our causal factor of us collectively. And it is very theatrical and very indulgent, and also too is just out of, not really in control like the queen would be, right? This is much more about satisfying our own material desires. And for as much as Venus is the goddess of love and how beautiful she is, that is the dark side of her. It's just about her and indulging herself. And so there's a lot of this happening, and it's very, very much under the creative aspect. And again, you can see this coming out with that opposition to Juno retrograde in Sagittarius, with Vesta in that T-square to the moon in Gemini, right? Where is the release of that tension of wanting to express and proselytize and get people on board, in an opposition to to who should I even be listening? What obligation do I really have to follow whoever is just throwing these crumbs out, right? It's really about having the courage and the character to be able to go into the depths of who we are and really face ourselves, so that we can, make sense of that opposition. And this well, let's just move on, right? And see what we're looking at here. So we have the Hermit, right? So the Hermit, the Virgo card, also Saturn as the keeper of the gate, Saturn in Aquarius as the search for wisdom. Isn't that where Saturn is right now? In Aquarius, in a retrograde. But it is the Virgo card. So you see Cerberus, the three-headed dog that guards the gate of the underworld. The Hermit, there is this, you can see it's surrounding by wheat, right? Growth, right? Remember Virgo, in that part of the Virgo growing cycle, is that moment in time where the plant is nourishing the fruit by going into the root system and utilizing what is underneath in the soil. It's, of course, photosynthesis is still happening, but the focus of the plant shifts to growing the fruit, not the green growth, right? That's what photosynthesis is really focusing on. That's why the green is the color of chlorophyll. Anyway, so you see that this is about nourishing the fruit that bears the seed. You see the serpent wrapped around the egg. So we know that there is this underlying creative energy at the root of us, right? That Kundalini energy. And he's holding this light that is emanating from everywhere. And you don't really even see the hermit's face. It's just this figure here that looks as if they're facing the serpent and the egg, which is like this little tiny break within all of this foliage and growth, the wheat that is growing. So, and we also see that the hermit is facing towards the reverse princess. So this is, retreating from the outside world, listening to our inner voice, wisdom and mental maturity. Again, Saturn in Aquarius, the search for wisdom. And this is really directed at this, this princess of wands, this fire within us that is really finding it's not very appropriately expressed in a lot of ways, right? Where again, it's indulgent and it's theatrical and faithless, right? And arrogant, and really just focused on her own fire. And so we have to face ourselves. There's that Vesta in Virgo, which is a flame. So it's not that we should extinguish the flame. You can see here that the light is right here, but we have to go into the depths of ourselves in order to understand and utilize the flame maturely and with mastery. And this is where, if we don't do this, whatever it is that we are focusing on with this eclipse is what we're going to see, right, in our lives as we unfold. And some people have been dealing with some tremendously challenging situations lately in order to, flush out all of those old programs in order to be fully present and conscious with this eclipse. This is a point of magic, but it's up to us how we're going to use that. So the Virgo and this hermit energy and is really meant in the heart of the matter to be directed to this part of ourselves that really needs to, get really just needs a karmic confrontation. Okay, so. And many of us are going through this and have been. So where are we energetically rooted? So we do see ourselves in authority in terms of a material world, right? The King of Keys. So confident, astute. There's travel here, right? He's on his horse. He's actually returning home. So he's gone out to battle. He's gone out to do whatever he needs to do, maybe as in a diplomatic thing, right? We do know that he's traveling and he's responsible for the reality that he sees. He has to go out and do something about it. And so it's very goal-oriented here. But if we can root ourselves here energetically, this is where I think we can draw a lot of our power from. Now, again, court cards, this is us, right? Either individually and collectively, this aspect, or somebody in our lives. But really, we're talking about a collective connection here to an energetic root where we can draw our power from, being completely confident and astute when it comes to the material reality and everything we're responsible for. And there's maturity here, right? The king is mature, relatively, right? The king is in charge of all of this. And so he's got responsibility, and there is, he has to go into battle, or he has to go, make connections, diplomatic connections, potentially with other kingdoms. So there is an authority here that we can really draw our own power from. And as we come up through this heart of the moment with this Virgo energy and Saturn in Aquarius with the hermit, we find ourselves with the scribe, which was part of yesterday's reading, wasn't it? The scribe, the most educated and learned individuals in a society, because they are responsible for the record of everything in the culture: history, literature, mathematics, architecture, spirituality, and religious dogma. All of it, the scribe is taking down, right? And the 12 here represents that it's really the end of the cycle. We accumulate all information, all experiences, all aspects of our culture or our experience or our life or whatever. It doesn't, we can't bypass it. It's all there. And so you become incredibly knowledgeable and wise when you take in all this information. So our conscious attention and awareness here is taking in the info, taking and recording it so that we can reflect back on it, or not be shocked when it comes back around in that 12th house type of way, where we have to deal with our karma, right? There's no getting around it. So our conscious attention, our contribution that we can make, how we can, consciously bring this power up and out is really with this scribe energy, which is about an upsweep in mind and study and being very well versed in a variety of subjects, well, all subjects really, because it's important. Now, we can't be a master of everything, but everything we need to know is already embedded within us. So it's just a matter here of accumulating that and acknowledging that we are recording everything and that we can record everything. So this is where it gets weird, right? Because there's the 7 of discs. I told you about Crowley being super dramatic, right? Failure, right? The 7 of discs. So Saturn in Taurus, right? The Lord of Time in the position of fixed Earth. There's no getting around. There's just nothing that can get around what we put into something. And if we put things into something to grow that is, we don't have the right nutrients, if we're not watering enough, whatever it is, right? It's going to be rotten. Sometimes, I used to be in the cannabis industry, and anybody who has been in that commercially on any kind of larger level knows the paranoia about things like mold and mildew and pests, and you can lose a whole crop. Right? And this is not just cannabis, this is all crops, you know what I mean? You can look at this throughout history of failures, agricultural failures, and what happens. So this, in a very basic way, is representing that, is like whatever, we have to contend with what it is that we have cultivated so far. And Saturn is just like, yeah, there's no getting around this. So we fall into the abyss of fate at this point, right? The wild card, something gets horribly fucked up on some level, and then we allow for the divine intervention, right? The 8 of discs, which is actually the sun in Virgo, right? And so in order to get to that place, though, we have to feel what it is we've accumulated so far, or be aware of it. Now, our hopes are deceived and crushed. There are unfulfilled promises, right? There's false success, and it has cost more than it has gained, okay? Ooh, that's really important. It's cost more than it's gained. Cost-benefit ratio is something to just be aware of in general, energetically, okay? Ooh, energetically. That's important. So what is the benefit of this card? Well, there's so much to learn here, right? About patience, learning the ability to wait, right? Accepting that we can't just jump on things when they're first presented to us because they seem flashy and great. And this is really what this represents. I mean, Princess of Wands is flashy and, jumping on things that are flashy and great and gratify her sense of transformation and creativity, right? And pulls it towards her. And so we're going, even the Hermit, this is that karmic confrontation. There's no getting around it, that we have to come to terms with what is a false success, what have we given up? Where have we put in more energy than we're actually getting out? Like, there's just no getting around having to come to terms with this, especially because we are willing to look at ourselves and have that karmic confrontation and go into the gates, right? To send into hell and to go into the search for wisdom. And sometimes it's a painful journey. And this is... But we need this, right? How else are we going to utilize this eclipse as a point of pure manifestation magic with all of this Gemini energy if we don't come to this point first, right? And it's going to be hard because the moon in Gemini in its balsamic phase right now is like distilling everything down to this very basic, like, oh, all these ideas and potentials and blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, we have to slow our roll here and still deal with everything that has come about and what it actually is so far. But there is so much to learn here about our ability to trust and to be patient and to wait and to only act on things that are actually going to yield the best and most fruitful results. Now, there's some good guidance here. Number one, the architect, the one of keys, right? We're in charge. We are the master, and it's time to step into our power and our position of power as manifestors, right? We are the ones that hold the key. We are the architect of our material reality, and we direct the course of all of it. It's going to take a long time. You don't build a pyramid in a day, do you? Or anything, you don't build Rome in a day. No, you certainly don't. You don't build any of these structures in a day. But we still have to at least acknowledge that we are, in fact, the architect of our own reality. So applying this to this King of Keys energy is really going to help. On top of that, the Wolverine has been coming up so much. And I mean, it's obvious that we need to, and I do say need, we all do. That's why I say we. I'm here with you, right? And anybody's telling you different is full of shit. I'm sorry. That's just a personal opinion. We all need to dig deep right now, right? And remember the times that we've had to dig deep before so that we can remind ourselves that we are a lot tougher than we think we are, because facing that failure can be devastating on, the most supreme level. And so we need to be able to dig deep and to realize we are the creator of our own reality, that we are the architect of our own material reality, and really allow ourselves to draw our power from this role as a total sovereign of our material reality. We are tougher than we think. We just need to remind ourselves, and the Wolverine keeps coming back in order to remind us as well. And then we have Pueo when it comes to the scribe, because it's not just the written word, and it's not just stuff that we're recording in terms of our own reality right here and now. I mean, that's all important, but it's also all of our multidimensional experiences, right? Because that's happening simultaneously. It's not a linear, like, past lives thing. I mean, yeah, sure. It's past lives to us because sometimes we have experiences where we've lived in different time periods, but the multidimensional aspect of who we are is doing all of this simultaneously. And so to transcend we don't want to get caught in the linear progression of time here, which is going to be really hard with Saturn in the mix, obviously, especially Saturn in Taurus. There's kind of no getting around that either. But if we want to be offered guidance from our ancestral spirit guides, from our own spirit team, our galactic team, whoever our guidance system is, we want to be open to it. And consistency of message is really important. And if we have been recording so much of these experiences multidimensionally, of course, in our present moment, if we express ourselves through this, part of that is the guidance that we're getting, and we have to be open to it. So if we shut down our ability to still record information, to take in more information and explore and things like that, then I don't think that we're going to allow ourselves this guidance that's a little unorthodox or not based in physical reality, right? Our ancestral spirit guides. Consistency in message is really important, and you only can really come to terms with that if you have been recording all of your interactions thus far. Then you can see where there is consistency. You can also see and feel where there's inconsistency, and pay attention, because the synchronicity and the consistency is where you're going to really get the most guidance. But you can't do that if you haven't been recording your experiences this whole time. So the scribe, again, recording it all, is allowing you to not only connect to your guides, but also to recognize consistency in message. And that is really, really important right now with all of this Gemini energy swirling around, squaring Neptune and Pisces. And the last one, caught in the ruins, right? We've seen this before. caught in the ruins, right? When it's reversed like this, it's discovering that you can break, that we've broken free, right? Again, we are, it's important to stay the course and to hold the line. And it's really important to recreate new thoughts and actions rather than falling back into the old pattern. It's really easy to do when you've been caught in this place for a really long time. But the fact that it's reversed is really signaling that we are starting, to apply this concept that we are imprisoning ourselves essentially, right? And that we can break free, and that we've discovered that we can break free of a prison. And sometimes other people's conceptions of reality and what they're telling you is in fact a prison. And I would say that, again, that is the whole nature of a psychological operation. That's just my opinion. So if you want to get out of that, and you really want to connect to your guidance and really get into the consistency of the message here, you do have to realize that we're the only ones, in this position, number one. And number two, that we have to actually work to not fall back into it. And part of that is recording information, taking in all of the information that we are presented with and making, it's a very Piscean thing. And when Jupiter moves into the next degree of Pisces, which is tomorrow with the solar eclipse, it is that third degree, that second to third degree, that it's going to be moving through, which is about the fragmented but very sustained records of a culture, of an advanced culture, for instance. So there is a lot that we can connect to that is ancient, and we can gather these messages, I would say, and interact with them, that it's coming through about where we've been and what the remnants of those experiences. And that's in our past, that's multidimensional, because it's all happening at once, right? It's just that our conception of time is so limited by being in the third dimension that we only see it as linear. I just had this conversation last night, actually. So that's intense. I think I'm going to leave it there. I mean, I feel like that I've addressed everything that has been presented to me, and that I'm transmitting everything that is relevant to all of this messaging that has come through, and this and the astrological component. It's just so important today that we are getting grounded and accepting this karmic confrontation for as painful and as challenging as it is. And everybody's going to have it in a different way. And some people, it's going to be really obvious and on the surface. Other people, it's going to be happening in the astral. Aquarius rising people, this is definitely a lot of that's happening in the astral, because, Pluto is transiting our 12th house right now. Mars in opposition to it in the 6th house. Venus now in the 6th house. And that is the Virgo house, isn't it? That is the Virgo house. And so we are really being challenged. I would say Aquarius rising people really being challenged in a lot of ways, because a lot of the karmic work and the destruction is happening in the collective unconscious and in the astral realm, which is multidimensional. So I'm just speaking to that because that's something personal that can connect to, and you can just go through each of the signs, and maybe I should do that as an added bonus of when I do the report for the eclipse, just kind of like, this is the house that the eclipse is happening for each sign. I think I will do that, because then you can relate it to something tangible to you, right? Oh, the eclipse is happening in my blah, blah, blah house, and so this is how it's impacting me, this area of my life. So guys, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Whatever you decide to do while you're here and we're all together, I will be releasing that report today. That's going to be my next point of action, actually. So, and if you are here because you have been led here because of the Mercury retrograde summit, the astrology summit, and you watched my talk and you are awaiting your starseed reading, I assure you it is coming. I'm prepping them right now. I want to get past the eclipse information and reports first, and then I'm going to dive right into those. So just be patient. Again, that's the name of the game right now, is patience. I promise you, Every reading I have done has been timed so perfectly. So just trust it, because it's going to come exactly when you need to hear it. And that has been reported to me over and over and over again. So I've just stopped even stressing about things like that. So if you are anxious about it, I would recommend that just release that, because that's the name of the game right now too, is to just release expectation and release expectation around time, and get yourself grounded, right? Be in the present moment right now, because that's all there really is. And you'll be just fine. All right, guys, I love you. I'll see you later for the astrology report for the eclipse. And we will be live tomorrow for the eclipse for transmission, an intuitive transmission. So love you guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.